are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and White House correspondent, right here in afternoon drive time in LA, where I'm in touch. And so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the socials at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app if you haven't already. Download the KBLA app. That way you'll never miss an episode. And subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. Get that little push notification. And that way you won't miss some of our best episodes, some of our most memorable conversations. I shouldn't say the best, because every day we try to do our best. And so some of the most memorable conversations, just go ahead and subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. And look, I got to plug this because it's not often that you have a chance to sit at the feet of the GOAT. Talking about Tavis Smiley. If you haven't already, if you go to KBLA1580.com, you can register for the Art of Conversation. It's a 6-course series with Tavis Smiley. It's called The Anatomy of a Great Conversation Live. And during this 30-minute session, he's going to talk about mastering the art of conversation to give you a decided advantage in your personal and professional life. He's going to talk about some of the proven techniques that he's used over the course of 40 years, if you can believe it, of high-stakes conversations with folks that you couldn't even imagine. And he's going to talk about techniques that you can apply when you need to get people to open up, to navigate tension without damage and create connection that actually leads to somewhere. I think these are tools that we all need, whether you are an interviewer or you're just looking to forge a stronger connection with the people in your orbit. And so go to KBLA1580.com to register. It's going down virtually on Monday, January 26th at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. It is completely free. Be there, be square. All right. Now it's time for your National News Roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, did y'all see this today at the White House? Venezuela's opposition leader says that she presented Trump with her Nobel Peace Prize. What? President Trump, of course, lost out on the Nobel Peace Prize, yet, as reported by NBC News and a whole lot of other sources, in a rare confluence of geopolitics and chance, he may have wound up with the 18-karat gold medal nonetheless. Maria Corina Machado, who won the 2025 prize, she said that she presented the medal to Trump during a private meeting at the White House today in appreciation for deposing Venezuela's repressive leader, Nicolas Maduro, in a military raid on January 3rd. It was not immediately clear whether Trump accepted the gift. And after an event at the White House, Trump told sources that his meeting with Machado was great. He didn't respond when asked if he'd taken the award. He just said, "That's great." So, there she is, bending the knee, looks like surrendering her dignity in an effort to curry favor with the American president that has taken over Venezuela. That's what we watched today. I mean, there aren't reality TV shows out there that could capture the low that we have hit today, where a foreign leader is having to woo the American president, appealing to his ego, appealing to his interest in getting a Nobel Peace Prize, just to present her Nobel Peace Prize, almost offer it to him. Does that sound normal to you? Does that make you feel any safer? Does that make you any more confident in the vote you may have cast or not cast? Just saying. In other news, the LA Times is reporting that flu cases are surging here in California as officials are warning of a powerful virus strain. Be careful out there, y'all, because look, California officials, they've issued these warnings about a new flu strain that's increasing flu-related cases and hospitalizations statewide. We know that a newly emerged flu, it's called influenza A strain, H3N2. It's a subclad K, and it's already wreaking havoc globally, and it's affecting hospitals and clinics in California. The agency, the California Department of Public Health, they've described the seasonal flu activity as elevated in the state, and data shows that the flu test positivity rates, which measure the percentage of patients who come in with flu symptoms and actually test positive for influenza, they've been rising in recent weeks. And so if you're not feeling well, put your mask on, which you have no business, walking amongst the rest of us, just coughing and hacking and not washing your hands. Like, do all the things. We lived through COVID. We know what protocols we need to take in order to keep other people from getting ill. And so do that. Please do that. When we come forward, we're switching gears. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Dr. Calvin John Smiley of Hunter College. We're going to be talking about Minnesota. And specifically, we're going to be talking about how Trump is working really hard to find a way to invoke the Insurrection Act. In fact, he's now threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act in response to Minneapolis protests. We're going to unpack that when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and really delighted to be back in conversation with my friend, Dr. Calvin John Smiley. He's Associate Professor of Sociology over at Hunter College at the City University of New York. If you haven't already, you should pick up his books. I would call them required reading, particularly for this moment we find ourselves in world history. You may want to check out Defund. You also may want to check out Purgatory Citizenship. And while you're at it, Justice, Inequality, and the Digital World. Welcome to the show, and Happy New Year, Calvin.
Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you too. And so before we talk about Minneapolis, and there's a lot to talk about, just moments ago, I was sharing a story that has had me annoyed for most of the afternoon. I'm talking about the images coming out of the White House of Venezuela's opposition leader visiting with Trump and attempting to feed his ego by sharing her Nobel Peace Prize, the prize that she won in 2025. She presented the medal to Trump during a private meeting at the White House, and in appreciation of deposing Maduro in the U.S. military raid. This smells awful. This smells like a carefully choreographed photo op to excuse the inexcusable. But that's just me. What do you think?
I think I agree with you in the sense that we saw this coming. And it also, it begs a bigger question about what was the conversations around the Nobel Peace Prize, even in 2025, because giving it to Maduro's opposition positions Maduro as evil and puts her in this kind of good space. And now she's giving it to Trump. It all seems too well orchestrated to justify, Western imperialism. And, there's not a time in history where Western powers go into the Caribbean, Central and South America, and the local populations come out on top and just do amazing. So the fact that she's been spouting that she wants U.S. oil companies to come in and that she would privatize the oil and other resources certainly doesn't bode well for the Venezuelan people, irrespective of what they or anyone else thinks of Maduro. And so this clearly is, as you said, a photo op, and it feeds and strokes Trump's ego, because he is certainly a person of kiss the ring or you're my enemy.
I mean, it is. What is it going to take for leaders, so-called leaders in the Republican Party, to push back and to check what is the unfettered power of this president? They had an opportunity to rein him in with a vote on the War Powers Act, and they choked.
I don't know if they want to. I mean, I think what we've seen is this consolidation of power exponentially. It's been going, through this kind of upward pyramid where Trump has surrounded himself with certainly only loyalists, but also with the tech billionaires and these other very shall we just say hyper-capitalistic imperialist mindsets, whether that's, and racist, right? Whether that's Elon Musk or some of these others. And so I think there's a level of that certain politicians might be scared of that, right? Like what could happen to them personally, professionally. But I think there's others who are just, step and toe in line with this. And so to your question of what is it going to take to curb this or stop this, I think if we aren't already there, we are dangerously close that it would be something more than what we think of as traditional Democratic votes.
From Washington to Minnesota, it's a bit ironic that officials have identified a man that was shot in the leg by federal officers in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security released the name of the second person shot in Minneapolis by an ICE officer. We might remember Renee Good was shot in the head by an ICE officer. Well, officials, according to USA Today, have identified the man as Julio Cesar Sosa Celis. And ironically, they said he's from, guess what? Yep, Venezuela. The Department of Homeland Security said that he remained hospitalized after being shot in the leg by a federal ICE officer during what they call a targeted traffic stop in the city one night prior. There's so many layers to this story, but let's start with the fact that the opposition leader of Venezuela pulls up to the White House today and presents Trump in this private meeting with her Nobel Peace Prize. Meanwhile, the same president that is committed to anything but peace in these Minneapolis streets has officers as agents of his federal government shooting people in the head and in the leg.
With total immunity, right? The Department of Homeland Security have tweeted out, have gone on various news outlets and said that all of these ICE agents have total immunity. So they really have been given at least a sounding board for licenses to kill. And we've seen through various reports, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was just an article that came out earlier this week, who was a known leftist activist and vocal against ICE, who qualified to become an ICE agent. So there is really, they are hiring anyone with a heartbeat and willing to do thy bidding. And we've also seen that plenty of these Proud Boys and other white nationalists have joined this. The head of the Proud Boys was uncovered to be listed as an ICE agent. So the people who were leading the insurrection 5 years ago are now the ones leading ICE. And so we are in really, really dangerous times. And again, I think and this is the part of fascism that I think we have to be really scared about, is that the narrative that they tell us doesn't always have to align with what we see. And they don't even care anymore, right? It was, not to switch topics, but, Trump talking about if Iran kills its protesters, then he's going to go in. Only less than 24 hours after Renee Good was shot and killed by a federal ICE agent. So, the irony is that they actually don't care if we believe them or not now. And so they are going to do anything they want. And as you said, right, it's so layered and complex, right? Venezuelan opposition giving him her Nobel Peace Prize as Venezuelan nationals are being shot, or it's just, we are really in dark days, and I'm not sure that I am confident that there is uh, a civil way out of this. I'm really at a loss of words with some of this.
Well, we know that folks like Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts is at least proposing something worth fighting for. She's introduced a bill to end qualified immunity for ICE officers following that fatal shooting of Renee Good. I would also add the fatal shooting of Keith Porter. And it's important that we say his name as well, Keith Porter, who was killed by an ICE officer in Northridge, California here. She introduced this new bill in the House that would end qualified immunity and expand accountability for ICE agents. Dr. Smiley, in case there are folks out there that may have a little amnesia, can we speak directly to the goldfish ministry out there for a moment and just remind people how we got here? We actually had a chance to end qualified immunity, at least lower the threshold by which qualified immunity could apply to officers back in 2020 when the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed out of the House, not once, but twice.
Right.
And died in the Senate, died with folks hoping and praying and hoping that folks like Senator Tim Scott somehow was going to be able to get Republican votes for this bill to right so many wrongs. So tell the people, tell the Goldfish Ministry how we got here, because I think there are so many folks, both Democrats and Republicans, that deserve to be called out for the fact that here we are in 2026, one of the co-sponsors of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act now having to reintroduce a standalone bill to end qualified immunity.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and we see how there's been a kind of warming of the pot on the stove for decades now, with the militarization of U.S. law enforcement. As I always tell my classes, there was that moment in history. If you're a TV Land buff, you can watch the Andy Griffith show, where Andy Griffith didn't even have a gun, and in Gomer Pyle, and they were goofy and silly. And that's not to excuse that police weren't doing bad things. They were certainly doing bad things even at that time. But the imagery of the cop went from the kind of Andy Griffith in Mayberry to RoboCop, right? And even by today's standards, 1989, 1990, RoboCop looks underqualified than we see ICE agents and other police officers walking around with full military gear and guns slung over their vests and extra magazines. And so there's this been hyping up of it, and what becomes part of that is the propaganda, or what we call the propaganda, that police, if you go against the police, if you criticize the police, then you're un-American. And that is something that is very, very dangerous. And I think a lot of reasons why these types of bills have died in places like the Senate, because once again, politicians are often only thinking about how is this self-serving me and my career. And if I get behind this, am I going to lose out on both funding, whether that's through lobbyists or other kind of dark monies? Am I going to lose out on my constituents because I might be from a more conservative or in this case, progressive area? So there's a lot of things that are going into it. And who loses out? The American people.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the American people losing out, when we come forward, NBC News is reporting that Trump is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act in response to the Minneapolis protests. This is something that Dr. Smiley and I have talked about for months at length. I've spoken about this on this show over the course of many months, and here we are. President Trump confirms my suspicion. Where we go from here, who knows? You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Dr. Calvin John Smiley right here on A More Perfect Union. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, trying not to be a little less squinty. Now, reading all these headlines is making me a little squinty, right? It's making my Keels ministry work a little harder today. But Dr. Calvin John Smiley don't know nothing about that. We're live. This is real.
We're live. We are live.
It's a real thought.
Yeah, I was like, your skin's glowing over there, brother. You looking good. Looking good.
Thank you. So listen, we were talking before the break about how this president who just won't let up is now looking to employ the Insurrection Act. And, this story really confirms, what one of my worst fears has been, what I think one of the worst fears of a lot of people has been. NBC News reporting that President Trump today threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in response to the rising tensions between protesters and federal personnel in Minneapolis. He said, quotes, "If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only trying to do their jobs, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that's taking place in that once great state." That's what Trump posted on Truth Social. What do you think of this escalation?
Yeah, he's continuing to see how far he can push, and it feels very much that Minnesota is the testing ground. And a lot of people might be asking why Minnesota, and there's a whole host of reasons, right? It's Middle America. It's got a large immigrant community, particularly Somali immigrants. It's seen as a Midwest state that is progressive. So it is a place where he can potentially flex his muscle to see how far he can go. And I think part of it is to invoke violence on the part of people to fight back, because there's only so many times you're going to kick people, brutalize them, outright murder them before people start to take a stand. And that stand can be anything from acts of nonviolent peaceful demonstrations to acts of civil disobedience to acts of self-defense to eventually maybe even outright proactive aggression, because you want to stop your neighbor from being caught by the modern day slave catchers / Gestapo. And so the fact that he is pulling all the way back from an 1807, I believe, law just highlights the lengths that he and this administration will go. And so where I really want to see is what are elected officials who are against this, what are they going to do, right? It's great to send out a tweet. It's great to post something. It's great to have a press conference. But, are you going to be on the front line with your constituents? Are you going to go on a hunger strike? Are you going to engage in several acts of civil disobedience yourself? I mean, at what point, if you are an elected official, particularly in Minnesota or other places, that you need to go and, put your own physical self between this fascism and the people that you serve?
I mean, what do you make of the fact that Trump, he has floated using this Insurrection Act a whole lot? Recently, several times last year, citing the need for, quote, safe cities across the country. The president also considered invoking it during his first term amid protests in, guess where, Minneapolis, following the murder of George Floyd. Is part of this also sort of revisiting the past? Is part of this about, doing the thing in Minneapolis that he really wanted to do after George Floyd, but didn't have the team in place that allowed him to be able to do that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we know that Minneapolis has, in some ways, been ground zero for protests and wanting different and better, especially in the, what are we in now, the 2020s. So certainly that, but also, I mean, there's the fact that, you know, Representative Ilhan Omar is there, and that, you know, Trump and his administration continue to push and peddle just outright racist propaganda about her, that she married her brother, or that she's here illegally, or that she's, you know, doing all of this fraud. I mean, there's certainly this focus on Minnesota and Minneapolis, and again, I think there is something to be said about where it is geographically in this country that makes it this kind of rightness for him to try to, you know, certainly carry out a fascist and authoritarian governance that will be used as a precedent and grounding for potentially other cities. Because, as you said, he's threatened this before, and he's also threatened it in other places around the country as well.
Now, you know, let's take this all the way to what I believe is the end goal of this president, the end goal of this administration. When you invoke the Insurrection Act, essentially, you take full control, total control over public safety, you know, in this municipality, in this state, potentially. And I think that this is a trial run leading up to the election. What happens when he actually does it, when we are already into early voting, or when we are, you know, it's the week of the election, where you have folks, federal troops, federal agents that are assigned to voting precincts in certain parts of town to intimidate and discourage. Is it just me, or does this seem like the obvious aim of this president in order to maintain his grip on political power?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'll even take it a step further, where he's even floated ideas around, if we are at war, or if there's chaos, that we can suspend elections. So we could be in the middle of voting, and he and his team could start looking at how votes are potentially trending, and he can then say, well, you know, this, you know, behind closed doors, saying this is not looking like it's going our way. So then come out and say, well, we're going to just suspend that election, and I'll put somebody in power who I believe is, you know, quote unquote, the true American, the person who's going to have all of our interests, the person who loves this country. And so what we are seeing is, again, the continued dress rehearsals for a potential larger taking of power. And this is something that should be very alarming to everyone, because this is someone who is clearly not playing by the rules that we are, I think, as Americans, so accustomed to, right? That we just believe that corruptness is something that happens beyond our walls, or beyond our borders, right? That the corruptness happens in those other countries. Our country isn't like that. You know, yes, things might be politically and ideologically not aligned, but at the end of the day, everyone still follows the rules. And this guy has told us, I don't care what the rules are. I make them up as I go along. And unless we have a really, really a foundational counter to that, we're going to continue to see him take more of that power away from us.
Dr. Smiley, in our remaining minutes with you, I want to give you a chance to share maybe some of the frequently asked questions you're getting from your students. As I mentioned at the top of our conversation, you are the author of many books that I think should be required reading right now, because they perhaps help us understand the context of the moment we're in. I'm talking about your book, Defund. I'm talking about your book, Purgatory Citizenship, and the book that you co-edited, Justice, Inequality in the Digital World. What are some of the frequently asked questions you're getting from your Hunter College students?
Yeah, I mean, Students are scared. One of the beautiful things I love about CUNY is that we are a university system that is made up of quite literally the rainbow of diversity. We have students who are coming from traditional two-parent backgrounds, middle class. We also have students who are coming as immigrants. We have students who are coming from socioeconomic disadvantaged backgrounds. We have students who are first generation college students, first generation Americans, non-traditional age students. And it's just a beautiful thing. But one of the things that many students are afraid of is ICE going to show up at Hunter's doors? Is ICE going to show up at their home? Is ICE going to show up at the classroom? And what then becomes the next steps? How do we protect our students? What do we do? And so a lot of students are taking precautions. I had a student who asked last spring if they could just sit in on one of my classes, not because they were enrolled in it, because they just wanted to be someplace where they felt safe, right? It's just sitting in the library, just sitting in the cafeterias, just sitting in the kind of free space of a college campus where there might be sofas and things, felt like it was too exposed. Whereas if they were in a classroom, they could at least be someplace that has a door that can be protected. And so that's one of the things that I think a lot of students are feeling. The next question is, well, then how do we combat that, right? How do we move past this? How do we get over it? And I try to keep it real with my students, right? In the sense that when we look at fascism historically and we look at authoritarianism, unfortunately, voting alone doesn't end it, right? There has to be a large amount of people who are organizing, and organizing is really, really important. And so what does that mean? That means getting involved locally, really locally, right? And that could mean doing a multitude of things. And that could range from mutual aid, where you're delivering food, giving out clothing. It could be political education classes, knowing your rights, how to protect your neighbors, what they should say or you should say if you're confronted by local, state, or federal authorities. It could be other forms of organizing in terms of having strategic plans, having get out kind of scenarios, like how do you protect your neighbors? And then the last thing I'll say is everyone is at a different part of their journey in what we call this life. And Indie Fund, I talked to, I'm forgetting, why am I forgetting her name? I'm so embarrassed right now. But Indie Fund, I have to look it up. Excuse me. I'm so sorry.
All right. That's all right.
I'm in the moment. Oh my God. Michael and Debbie Davis. I wanted to say her sister, Merle, but Michael and Debbie Davis, who spent 40 years in a Pennsylvania prison for being organizers, part of the MOVE organization. And one of the things that Debbie says that I think is so beautiful in the book is that we all can't be on the front line, right? We're all not going to be on the front line because you need someone who's going to be making the flyers, someone who's going to be making the food, someone who's going to be watching the babies. So I say that to say that we all have different roles to play in this. Find your role, find your people, find your community, and do what you can to combat this in whatever you think is the most appropriate way to fight against fascism. Because once again, it's not gonna end just from simply voting. And unfortunately, up until this time, and I would love to be able to eat my words on this, we have not seen a Democratic Party that has given us a counter narrative as a party, right? I mean, I just was reading how many Democratic elected officials are voting in favor of continuing to fund ICE. I mean, one of the things that you could certainly do in opposition as an elected official is filibuster the vote to give them more funding, or there's so many, and we're not even seeing that. And so this is really going to be at the local level, and I guess we'll just have to As Miriam Kaba says, hope is a discipline.
Hope is a discipline indeed. And we're glad that you can join us to be a demonstration of what that discipline can look like. Our thanks to Dr. Calvin John Smiley, professor over at Hunter College. Be sure to pick up his books. Again, required reading. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, it's time for the quiet part out loud. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and it's time for the quiet part out loud. Our friends over at The Root are reporting on the red state's only predominantly Black institution. There's one particular red state where their only predominantly Black institution is set to close amid financial troubles. Ashay Smith over at the Root reporting that after nearly 5 decades of serving African American students in Indiana, it looks like Martin University may be closing down for good. Currently standing as Indiana's only predominantly Black institution, this crisis is sure to have far-reaching effects on most of the underserved and overlooked students. Martin University, a private nonprofit located in Indianapolis, was founded in 1977, specifically for the purpose of serving low-income, minority, and adult learners and providing an inclusive and supportive and healthy collegiate environment. And this was all thanks to a Black priest, Reverend Father Boniface Hardin, who had a goal to change lives through education. I saw this and I couldn't help but think of my own grandfather, Reverend Prophet James Quartelai, who founded school that still exists in Ghana, still educating students today. It's called Quartelai Memorial Secondary School. It is a point of pride for our family. That school has existed for over 50 years. And so as I read this story, I saw the parallels in the intention around its founding and the population that it was founded to serve. Fast forward till today, and the institution's facing more challenges than ever, according to Complex. After a pause on operations, the school's board of trustees, they formally voted to close the university's doors for good, citing financial struggles and the lack of resources to help keep the institution afloat. But it's important that we note this didn't happen overnight. The folks at Martin University didn't just all of a sudden discover that, oh, wait a minute, we're not bringing in enough resources. Amid rampant diversity, equity, and inclusion rollbacks, Indiana Governor Mike Braun, a Republican, he conveniently left Martin University out of his proposed 2025 to 2027 funding budget. That's according to the folks over at Inside Higher Ed. He stripped the institution from its $5 million cash influx, and then State Representative Greg Porter, a Democrat, was shocked and highly disappointed by his decision, saying, quotes, "I won't mince my words. It's racist." Another Indiana Democrat in the district, Congressman Andre Carson, he also expressed concerns of the budget, calling the move out for rejecting what's best for students in favor of inaccurate and partisan talking points. And so I think it's important that we understand how we got here. And part of how we got here is that our taxpayer dollars were withheld from supporting this institution that was set up to support some of the underserved among us. If it can happen to Martin University in Indiana, could it happen to a university near you? Could it happen to your alma mater? Questions that need answers. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. In our next hour, when we come forward, we'll be joined with a special conversation from Human Rights Campaign President Kelly Robinson. And you don't want to miss my conversation with my buddy, Dr. Dante Morrison, author of a new book that you've got to know about. We are commemorating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with these two incredible leaders from the front lines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.